Think about this. Of all the edible plants our planet offers, um, just for wheat, rice, maize, and sugarcane, they make up half of all global primary crop production.
Yeah,
It's a startling concentration, isn't it?
it really is.
Makes you wonder what we might be missing out on.
It certainly does. And, when you have that level of reliance on just a few crops, the whole system becomes inherently fragile.
Hmm.
A blight, a climate shift, something that impacts even one of those staples could have, well, massive repercussions worldwide.
Exactly. And that brings us really to the heart of our deep dives today. We're zeroing in on this largely unexplored territory of underutilized native plant-based foods.
Right.
Could these traditional ingredients offer us a more secure food future, boost our nutrition, promote sustainability, and even help us hold on to vital cultural heritage?
That's the fundamental question, isn't it? For countless generations, diverse native plants have been, the bedrock of sustenance for communities across the globe.
Hmm.
So looking at their potential to become part of our mainstream food systems isn't just about discovering new flavors. It's really about building a food system that's more resilient and equitable.
So what's the foundation for this exploration? What sources have you been digging through?
Okay, so for this deep dive, we've conducted a systematic literature review. Essentially, we've taken a comprehensive look at the existing research.
Right.
In this case, 40 different global studies published between 1990 and 2023. These studies specifically looked at what we call the Native Plant-Based Food Value Chain, or NPFVC.
NPFVC, got it.
Yeah. Think of a value chain as the entire journey of a food, right? From its origin to your plate, including all the steps and people involved. These studies looked at that whole process for native plants.
40 studies, that's a deep dive into the deep dive. So what's our aim today? What are we hoping you, our listener, will take away from all this research?
Well, our goal is really to distill the core insights, into the obstacles, and maybe more importantly, the possibilities within these native plant-based food value chains.
Okay.
We want to understand why these foods haven't become more prevalent and what potential actions could help bridge that gap. Consider this your sort of fast track to getting informed on a critical area that often doesn't get the attention it deserves.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Why should we even care about studying these underutilized native plant foods and their value chains in the first place?
Yeah.
What's the compelling reason?
Well, there are several powerful reasons. Primarily, as we kind of touched on, these foods offer significant potential to bolster food security and drive economic growth, particularly in the regions where they originate.
Can you give us some specific examples maybe to illustrate that?
Absolutely. Many native plants boast really impressive nutritional profiles. Take baobab, for instance, a common fruit in parts of Africa.
Baobab, right.
It's not just high in vitamin C. Some studies suggest it contains significantly more than many common citrus fruits, plus a good dose of calcium, antioxidants.
Wow.
Or think about quinoa from the Andes. We know it for its protein, sure, but it's a complete protein.
Ah, right, all the essential amino acids.
Exactly, which is quite rare in the plant world. Incorporating these kinds of nutrient powerhouses into diets could have, well, really significant health impacts.
That's a great point about the nutrient density. Beyond just general nutrition, do these plants play a critical role in specific local contexts?
Indisputably, yeah. In numerous regions, native food plants are already fundamental to local food security. Think of species you might not have heard of, like the African star apple in Nigeria,
Okay.
which provides vital sustenance during certain times of the year, or the various acacia species in West Africa whose seeds and gums are traditional food sources, especially in arid and semi-arid areas.
Right.
These plants are often uniquely adapted to thrive where, conventional crops might struggle.
And that adaptability piece is huge, especially now. Thinking about climate change, environmental sustainability. How do native plants factor into that?
This is a major strength. Because native plants have evolved in their local environments, they often exhibit remarkable resilience to climate shifts, extreme weather. They are naturally suited to the conditions, meaning they typically require fewer external inputs.
Like less water, less fertilizer.
Exactly. Less irrigation, fewer synthetic fertilizers, pesticides. It leads to more sustainable agricultural practices. What's fascinating here is that by supporting these plans, we're often working with the local ecology rather than trying to force something that isn't, naturally suited.
Fewer inputs and better resilience. That sounds like a win-win for the environment and potentially for the farmer's bottom line too, right?
Precisely. And furthermore, supporting these native food systems can actively contribute to biodiversity conservation. Well, by creating a demand for a wider variety of species, we incentivize the preservation of their natural habitats. And from an economic standpoint, the sustainable commercialization of native foods can create significant economic opportunities for rural and indigenous communities.
Okay.
We've seen examples like acai in the Amazon, maca in the Andes, shea butter in Africa. They've become important sources of income while also often supporting traditional ways of life.
So it's not just about what we eat, but also about supporting livelihoods and local economies in a way that's sort of tied to the land.
Exactly. And we shouldn't overlook the crucial role these foods play in preserving traditional ecological knowledge and cultural heritage.
That's really important.
These plants often hold deep cultural significance, featuring in ceremonies, stories, traditional medicine. They're intrinsically linked to the identity and practices of indigenous communities.
It's a really interconnected web of benefits. Wow. Now, you mentioned this deep dive is based on a systematic literature review. Can you shed some light on how you actually went about selecting these 40 studies? What was your process?
Sure. Our methodology was designed to be rigorous and transparent. We followed the PRISMA workflow.
Prisma, okay.
Yeah, it's a widely respected set of guidelines for doing systematic reviews. We focused on articles published between 1990 and 2023, a period that's seen increasing attention on the commercialization of native foods.
Right.
We used a pretty comprehensive range of search terms across major academic databases, things like native, bush, indigenous, native food, and various combinations with value chain and agribusiness.
So you cast a pretty wide net, it sounds like, to capture as much relevant research as possible. What were the specific criteria you used to decide which studies, made the cut and which didn't?
Good question. Our inclusion criteria specifically targeted research focused on indigenous and native plant-based food value chains. Studies on underutilized plant species, those with potential for wider use but not currently major crops, and investigations into small-scale bush product industries. We also included papers on culturally significant species that are less known outside their native regions, and research on locally domesticated crops, sometimes called orphan crops, that have broader agricultural potential.
And what did you exclude?
On the exclusion side, we deliberately left out studies focused only on major commodity crops or purely biochemical or nutritional analyses that didn't look at the value chain itself.
Right, needed that value chain link.
Exactly. Also, research centered on livestock, papers on general food tourism without a specific native plant food focus, and non-timber forest products like, well, timber itself. We wanted to keep the focus sharply on the food aspect.
Makes sense.
We also prioritized peer-reviewed primary research, but we did include some high-quality reports from reputable institutions if they offered comprehensive data relevant to our focus.
It sounds like a very thorough process to ensure you were really getting to the core of the topic. What did you discover when you looked at the overall global landscape of research in this area? Were there any surprises?
One notable finding was the increasing trend in research interest in NPFEC, particularly after 2011,
Okay.
with a significant jump in publications in the early 2020s. This suggests, a growing global awareness of the importance of this field.
That's encouraging.
Geographically, Africa and Oceania have received the most research attention so far. But what's interesting here is that this also highlights significant gaps and opportunities for more research in other regions like South America, North America, and Asia, which obviously have a wealth of underutilized native food plants.
That geographical imbalance is interesting. Were there any patterns in terms of the specific types of native foods that researchers have been focusing on?
Yes, definitely. Native vegetables and fruits are the most frequently researched categories. They make up a significant portion of the studies we looked at.
Okay.
What's potentially surprising, maybe, is that seeds and nuts, which are often nutritionally dense and have good potential for processing and storage, appear to be relatively understudied.
Huh. That seems like a missed opportunity.
It could well be. It might represent a promising avenue for future research and development.
That's a good point. Sometimes the less obvious categories hold significant untapped potential. Did you notice any connection or perhaps a disconnect between where the research is being done and where the traditional knowledge about these foods resides?
This is a really crucial observation. We did indeed find a disparity in some regions, for instance, Australia and South Africa. While having relatively smaller indigenous populations compared to some other parts of the world, they show a higher volume of publications on NPFEC.
Okay.
Conversely, countries like China and India, which have very large indigenous populations and, a rich history of using native plants, have surprisingly less research output in this specific area, at least in the journals we surveyed.
Hmm.
This raises an important question about whose knowledge is being documented and how effectively research is engaging with and learning from the communities that hold centuries of traditional wisdom.
That really underscores the importance of kind of inclusive and respectful research practices that truly involve traditional knowledge holders.
What about the focus of the research itself? Who along that native plant food value chain has been getting the most attention?
Our analysis indicated that the primary focus of research has often been on the initial stages. So the farmers and harvesters, the production end of the value chain.
Right, the beginning.
Yeah. And while understanding production is absolutely essential, it suggests that there might be a more fragmented understanding of the entire journey of these foods.
I see.
We need more research that looks at all the interconnected parts from how these foods are grown or harvested to how they're distributed, processed, and ultimately consumed. A whole system view.
Okay, so we have a picture of why this is important, how the research was done, and the overall global landscape. Let's dive into the specifics now. What are the typical characteristics you found in these native plant-based food value chains? What do they generally look like on the ground? Okay. Typically, the production of native plant-based foods tends to be small-scale, deeply localized, and intrinsically linked to indigenous communities who possess that vital traditional ecological knowledge.
Right.
It was interesting to observe that research in Australia often placed a strong emphasis on the cultural connections between these communities and the native foods, highlighting their significance in identity and practices.
Okay.
In contrast, research from African contexts sometimes focused more on the cultivation of these plants primarily for food security, with maybe less emphasis on those deeper cultural aspects in the studies themselves, though obviously they exist.
That regional difference in focus is quite telling, isn't it? About different priorities and perspectives in the research. What about how these foods actually get to people? What does the distribution network typically look like?
It varies quite a bit. In many African countries, informal local markets are the dominant distribution channels.
Okay, like village markets.
Exactly. These markets, while often lacking in formal infrastructure, are central to the livelihoods of the growers and provide crucial access to these foods for local communities.
Right.
On the other hand, in regions like Australia and the Americas, where growers are often located in geographically isolated rural and remote areas, there's a greater reliance on traders or consolidators.
Intermediaries.
Yes, intermediaries who act to connect these producers with broader markets. They play a critical, though sometimes challenging, role in the supply chain.
So quite different models depending on the specific regional and economic context. And finally, what are the key factors that shape how and why people actually consume these native plant-based foods? What drives their consumption?
Consumption is shaped by a fascinating interplay of factors. Culture is absolutely paramount. These foods are often deeply embedded in traditions, used in ceremonies, and serve as important markers of ethnic identity. Dietary habits, influenced by local availability and seasonal cycles, naturally play a big role too.
Makes sense.
Then there's the growing awareness of the health and nutritional benefits, driving increased interest in these nutrient-rich options. Socioeconomic factors are also significant.
How so?
Well, in some contexts, native foods might be seen as affordable staples, maybe poor people's food, unfortunately. While in others, particularly when they're commercialized and marketed differently, they can become premium or gourmet products.
Interesting dichotomy.
Yeah. And we're also witnessing a rising tide of culinary tourism and gastronomy that highlights native ingredients, which is creating new avenues for consumption and appreciation.
It really paints a picture of incredibly diverse and deeply rooted food systems, each with its own unique dynamics. But we also know there are significant hurdles in sort of scaling these up and making them more widely available. What are some of the primary challenges hindering the potential of these native plant-based food value chains?
Yeah, several interconnected challenges consistently emerge from the research. A major one is simply low consumer awareness and demand.
People just don't know about them.
In many parts of the world, exactly. People simply aren't familiar with these native foods, their culinary uses, or their nutritional advantages.
Yeah.
And this lack of awareness can be exacerbated by social stigma, where certain native foods might be negatively perceived as poor people's food, as I mentioned, or associated with, outdated or primitive practices.
It's a tough barrier.
It is. And fluctuating consumer preferences and a general reluctance, perhaps, to pay premium prices, even when the intrinsic value is recognized, further contribute to market instability and limited accessibility.
That social stigma element is particularly striking, especially considering the potential value and history associated with these foods. What other significant challenges did the research highlight?
Another significant hurdle is limited accessibility, both to markets and to essential resources.
Meaning?
This includes things like a lack of capital for producers to invest in their operations, limited access to suitable land, quality seeds or planting materials, and crucial information about market opportunities and pricing. High transportation costs, especially for those in remote growing regions, and the often cautious approach of major supermarkets to stocking unfamiliar native foods that further restricts their market reach.
Right. Supermarkets like predictability.
Exactly. And this limited accessibility, in turn, often reinforces the low consumer awareness we talked about.
It seems like a bit of a chicken and egg situation, doesn't it?
Oh,
Low awareness hinders market access, and limited market access keeps awareness low.
precisely. We also identified significant challenges related to production and supply inefficiencies.
Okay, what kind of things?
This includes a heavy reliance on rain-fed agriculture and wild harvesting, which can lead to inconsistent yields and vulnerabilities to climate variability. Limited technical support for producers in terms of sustainable harvesting techniques, processing, quality control. A lack of robust traceability systems to ensure food safety and origin, and overall poor financial viability for many producers, often due to high post-harvest losses and labor demands, all contribute to these inefficiencies.
So even if there's growing interest, ensuring a consistent and reliable supply chain seems to be a major obstacle.
Absolutely. And a lack of effective industry collaboration is another key challenge.
Meaning people not working together well.
Pretty much. Poor coordination, trust, and communication among the various actors in the value chain, from the individual growers to the aggregators, processors, retailers.
Right.
It can lead to low bargaining power for producers, who might be dependent on just one or two traders, high transaction costs in fragmented informal markets, and ultimately mismatches between supply and demand, resulting in price volatility that discourages investment.
It sounds like there's a real need for better organization and communication across the entire system.
That's a good way to summarize it. And finally, there's often a significant deficiency in the necessary support services.
Like infrastructure.
Yeah. Inadequate infrastructure transportation networks, storage facilities to reduce spoilage, processing capabilities to add value, but also limited technical and institutional support in areas like research, extension services that actually know about these plants, access to finance,
Okay.
and insufficiently developed policy and regulatory frameworks that specifically address the unique needs and characteristics of native food value chains also pose a barrier.
It's quite a comprehensive list of challenges. It
Yeah.
almost sounds like an uphill battle. But your review also highlighted some promising opportunities, right? Let's shift our focus to the potential upsides. Where could things go right?
Indeed. Yes, despite these challenges, the research reveals some very exciting global opportunities in NPFVC. On the production side, the inherent resilience of native plants is a major advantage.
We touched on that resilience before.
Right. Many possess natural tolerance to drought, pests, diseases, making them inherently more climate smart. And they often require fewer external inputs of water and synthetic chemicals. This can translate to reduced production costs for growers and significant benefits for their livelihoods, especially in marginal environments.
Climate smart is definitely a key consideration in today's world. Lower input needs, better natural resilience. Sounds like a very compelling combination. What about the trends we're seeing in the market? Are consumers becoming more open to these foods?
Absolutely. There's a clear global trend of increasing health consciousness among consumers,
Definitely.
driving a higher demand for nutritious and minimally processed foods, and many native plants fit this profile perfectly. We're also seeing a growing consumer curiosity and acceptance of novel and culturally significant foods.
The foodie culture, perhaps.
Partly, yeah, which creates opportunities for native foods to gain traction. There's potential for price premiums, particularly when these foods are linked to compelling ecological or cultural narratives that resonate with consumers.
The story matters.
It really does. We're also observing emerging opportunities in specialty restaurants and the broader food service industry, where chefs are increasingly interested in incorporating unique native ingredients.
Okay.
And we shouldn't overlook the potential in industrial markets for developing processed and functional foods derived from native plants. Plus, the rise of agro-ecotourism, where visitors seek out unique food experiences tied to sustainable practices, also presents a significant opportunity.
So it seems like native foods are really aligning with several key trends: health, sustainability, and that desire for unique, authentic culinary experiences. What about the underlying values that consumers hold? Do those play a role?
They absolutely do. Consumers are increasingly valuing the cultural and gastronomic significance of their food, wanting to know the story behind what they eat.
Right.
They're also more attuned to the nutritional and potential medicinal benefits of different foods. Environmental sustainability is a growing priority for many, and native food systems, with their lower input requirements and connection to local ecosystems, often align well with these values. Sensory qualities like unique flavors and textures, and the novelty factor of trying something new are also attractive. And furthermore, there's a rising importance placed on provenance and traceability, knowing where food comes from and how it was produced, respectfully.
Okay.
These evolving consumer values create a really strong foundation for building demand for native plant foods.
It sounds like there's a really promising alignment between the inherent characteristics of native foods and what many modern consumers are actively seeking. So, keeping these challenges and opportunities in mind, what kind of specific interventions could be most effective in leveraging the potential here? What actions can be taken?
The research points to three key and interconnected areas for effective intervention. The first is capacity building and fostering collaboration.
Okay, what does that involve?
This involves investing in training and resources for producers, things like post-harvest management to reduce waste, promoting innovation in processing technologies to create new products, even supporting domestication and improved horticultural practices for certain high-potential species. Establishing cooperatives and trade associations can empower producers and improve their market access. Public-private partnerships can bring together different expertise and resources, and developing comprehensive nutrition databases for native foods, establishing clear safety and quality standards, implementing effective traceability systems.
Yeah.
Those are also crucial for building consumer trust and facilitating market access.
So it's about equipping the people involved with the skills, knowledge, and organizational structures they need to thrive. What's the second key area for intervention?
The second critical area is strengthening support services.
Which we said were lacking earlier.
Exactly. This includes bolstering institutional support through agricultural extension services that are actually knowledgeable about native plants and providing access to tailored financial products. Government support is vital funding. R&D focused on native foods, providing training, technical assistance. Investing in infrastructure development, particularly improving transportation, storage facilities to minimize spoilage, local processing facilities to add value that's essential, and finally, creating supportive policy and regulatory frameworks.
Oh, so.
Frameworks that recognize and address the specific needs of native food value chains, including things like the protection of indigenous knowledge and the promotion of sustainable harvesting practices. That's paramount.
Laying that foundational groundwork with the right infrastructure and supportive policies seems absolutely essential for long-term sustainable growth. And what's the third key area for intervention?
The third crucial area is focused on awareness building and strategic market and product development.
Getting the word out, basically.
Yes, but strategically. This involves adopting market-oriented approaches, identifying high-value products that meet consumer needs and preferences, actively promoting agro-ecotourism experiences that showcase native foods and sustainable practices, and strategically developing new markets, both domestically and internationally. Implementing targeted consumer and farmer awareness programs is vital, educating both ends about the benefits and uses of native foods. And finally, diversifying market channels beyond just traditional informal markets to include restaurants, specialty food stores, online platforms. That's key to increasing accessibility.
It sounds like a really holistic approach is needed, doesn't it? Addressing everything from the very beginning of the chain with production right through to the end with consumer awareness and market access.
Precisely. These three areas of intervention: capacity building, collaboration, support services, and market development awareness, they aren't isolated. They are interconnected and mutually reinforcing.
Right.
Progress in one area can create positive momentum and spillover effects in the others, leading to a more robust and thriving native plant-based food system overall.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into a really vital and often overlooked area. To bring it all together, what would you say are the absolute key takeaways from all the research you've examined?
Um, I'd say the core takeaway is that native plant-based foods hold just immense potential to contribute to a more resilient, nutritious, and sustainable global food system while simultaneously supporting invaluable cultural heritage.
That's
But
nice.
realizing this potential requires a concerted effort. We have to overcome those significant challenges related to consumer awareness, market accessibility, production efficiency, industry collaboration, and adequate support services.
So, a wealth of potential, but also some considerable hurdles that need to be addressed strategically.
Yeah.
What's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with to really make them think?
Maybe just consider the inherent risks of a global food system so heavily reliant on just four crops.
Yeah.
What transformative possibilities could open up if we embraced a greater diversity of climate-smart native foods? Not just for our plates, but for the health of our planet and in recognition of the deep knowledge held within Indigenous communities. It's a future worth actively cultivating, I think.
Absolutely. A future worth cultivating. This deep dive offers just a starting point, really. We definitely encourage you, the listener, to explore the specific native foods that are part of your own local environment and think about how their increased appreciation and utilization could benefit your community and the wider world. Thanks for joining us for this fascinating exploration.